Welcome to Inside the Mavs. Kevin Gray, Mavs insider for 105 through the Fan, joined as always by my partner Grant Afseth of Mavs SI. Appreciate you joining us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast for free. Make sure you give the podcast a 5-star rating and write a review while you're there. You can also check this out on YouTube as well. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. You can find Grant on Twitter at Grant Afseth. Grant, how are you? How you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How about you?
Doing well. Excited for our guest today as we are just 1 week away from the NBA Draft as we record this, as the Dallas Mavericks hold the number 10 overall pick. There's a lot to get to in the course over the next week, and we're happy to have our guest joining us on Inside the Mavs today. You can find him on Twitter at Eric Pincus. Eric Pincus, salary cap strategist, capologist, writer, and instructor for Sports Business Classroom, joining us here on Inside the Mavs. Does terrific work for Bleacher Report. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time with us. We know this is a busy time for you, especially 1 week away from the draft, and then, of course, a couple of weeks away from NBA free agency. You have your complete 2023 offseason guide for Bleacher Report up. Tell us kind of what went into all of that work and putting this all together for all 30 teams in the league.
Mostly at man hours and lack of sleep, but I went through each team, went through the new rules of the new collective bargaining agreement, tried to anticipate what their payrolls will look like, give or take. I can't tell you what the Spurs are going to look like, but I could tell you how much money they spend or they have to spend. Whereas some teams are pretty well spent and you kind of know, like, okay, this is their flexibility. Went through their free agents, extension, everything I could think of, I put in there, give or take. I mean, Bleacher, they were kind enough to give me a lot of space to work with, and it's pinned to the top of my Twitter feed if you want to give it a peek. We're always looking for, obviously traffic pays my salary, but beyond that, reach out, take a look at it, because I do think it is a very helpful tool. It's how I kind of see the world, at least, when it comes to this. And what do I look at when it's like, okay, I want my team to go trade for the Bradley Beals of the world, the guys who are rumored. How can my team get that done? Well, how can we get that done is how it's usually presented to me. And my job is to then put myself in those shoes and try to make sense of it. So let's do that. But now let's do it for the Mavs.
Go ahead, Grant.
Yeah, when you were putting together that breakdown, including for the Mavs, what were some of the takeaways that kind of jumped out to you about what they could have in store, ahead of this offseason, as well as with that collective bargaining agreement kind of looming?
Well, I dug a little deeper. I want to say about a month ago, around the time when it was clear that the Mavs were shutting things down and not going for the playoffs, and I think they asked me, my editors, to write, what's next for Dallas, and what does this mean, so I dug a little deeper there. And so there's that. It's easy to find, just search Eric Pincus, Dallas Mavericks, Bleacher Report. You're bound to find it. I don't recall the title. But I think the heart of the matter is pretty obvious if you're a Mavs fan. It's like, what is the decision on Kyrie Irving? Is he, they gave up a lot to get him, multiple youthful considerations, draft picks, players. Dorian Finney-Smith is a good player, et cetera. Was that a very ill-advised few months of poor play? I mean, not that Kyrie played poorly, but the team gave up a lot of depth, and with injuries and situation, they did not succeed in what they had hoped it would be. But I also wrote in that article that, like, from my understanding, the Mavericks understood that they gave up it's not that they gave up too much. It's that they probably gave up too much to be successful on the level that they wanted in 23. And so they probably needed, and I think they knew when they made the deal, that they needed an offseason to flesh out a team that could support two elite scorer/ball handler creators. Like, that's the hardest thing to find, is what Luka does, flat out. Like, finding a guy who can drive your team, the entire offense of the team. That's what Jokic is for the Nuggets. And you need that second guy. And in the Nuggets example, it's Jamal Murray. Finding that second guy who complements your first is now the hardest thing to do, right? Like the hardest thing to do by far is getting the number one guy. But now that you've got him, that not as equal, it's not quite as hard, but it's certainly easier relative to that first one. But it's still extremely difficult. So they've got that now. Kyrie's a little bit, age not exactly matching. He's a little bit older, around 30-ish, over than Luka, but it can work if Kyrie wants it to, if the Mavericks want him back at the price that he needs to be paid. And I believe that the thrust of my article, I'd asked a number of people around the industry, what do you think is going to happen? What's the this? What's the that? And a lot of people were like, yeah, I've talked to like a lot of people. The Mavs and the Kyrie Irving camp have a deal lined up. Now, the Mavs will deny that, and it's probably exaggerated. It's probably not true to an extent because other teams or other agents or other sources may not know, or even if it was Kyrie himself who did not say this to me, but if Kyrie said it to yeah, I have a deal with them, that doesn't mean that he's right. Like he may be under the perception that they have a deal. Again, I'm illustrating, not don't be aggregating some like I talked to Kyrie Irving and he said that. That's not what I just said. How aggregation works. But so that's really the question. Can they make it work with Kyrie Irving at what price and then what length of contract? And then what flexibility do they have left to then fill those holes that were created in Kyrie? And that I think is the heart of the Mavs offseason.
And when you look at what Kyrie's eligible for, he's eligible for a max extension of 5 years, $272 million. And given the salary cap going to be around $134 million this upcoming season, how are you approaching, if you're the Mavericks, the idea, given all the things that come with Kyrie Irving and what the long-term future looks like in terms of years and money, and trying to have some of that flexibility moving forward as well?
I mean, I struggle when people ask me like what should, because the should gets very subjective. And like I have my own personal views of what works and what doesn't, but my job sort of requires me in some instances to, be devoid of ego and sort of put myself in the point of view of someone else. Like, so from the Mavericks point of view, you gave up all these assets. You have to win with Luka before his contract runs out. Now they do have some time, right? He's got 2 more guaranteed and then a player option. So it's vital that they're not doing what they did this last year, not making the play-in, let alone the playoffs repeatedly. They have to be successful. So Kyrie Irving was the choice that was made, and it's kind of hard to replace him. Now, if he leaves, they could get to a certain amount of flexibility, but is it enough to replace him? And what else do you have to lose in the process? Like they have the rights to Christian Wood. They have the rights to Dwight Powell and Ntilikina, different levels of rights with Theo Pinson, Markieff Morris, Justin Holiday. Some of them are very low. Holiday and Morris, the rights are very, don't help a lot. But certainly in, Wood and Powell, they can max out if technically, not saying that that's viable, but they have the flexibility to do so. So, is it just keeping that group together? And if so, if the money gets too high for Kyrie, that's really where you start to get into the complications of the new rules. How much flexibility will they have? So if you're paying Kyrie the max, and the max, we'll call it 47, it's just under. Well, we won't know the exact number until June 30th when they announce the actual cap. Current projections say it's just under 47. So if you're adding 47 and you're paying Luka what you're paying, and Hardaway, Bertans, all the guys that you have to decide at that point, who else do you bring back? And teams have to get to 14 players. So if you are just the players under contract, number 10, the number 10 pick, and Kyrie Irving at the max, you're in the neighborhood of about 169 million. Well, it just so happens that that's right at that first apron, give or take. So there's different lines in the NBA. There's cap space, there's cap room, right? Then there's teams that are over the cap but are under the tax. Then there's the tax, and then there's the apron, and then there's now a new second apron. This complication is great for business for me. It's not necessarily great for a casual fan who it's like, what is he talking about, right? But it's a lot. And so the higher you go under these new rules, the greater the restrictions. So if the Mavs were, for instance, at 169, they could spend $5 million in what's called the taxpayer mid-level exception to add one player. So really, if it's Kyrie plus one player, and that can get you to, let's say it's a $5 million player, and everyone else is gone. That would put them at about 172, which is it's over that apron. So there are certain restrictions they have in trading. It's not terrible. It's manageable, but that's all they have to spend. And does that solve the problem? So now you say, well, you have the rights to keep Powell. You have the rights to keep Wood. Maybe you keep some of the guys that you have and you just blow past that second apron. The punishments exist, but they get worse years in future years. And maybe you don't make a long commitment to that. I don't particularly love that. The other thing is can you trade out of salary? So you're paying Kyrie the max, and now you're reducing salary in some way so that you gain maybe the full mid-level exception, which is in the 12 million range, and another exception, which is called the biannual, which is around 5, under 5, but call it 5. So, though, is there a home for Tim Hardaway where you move his salary off because he's about 18 million, but don't get worse, right? Because you need to replace what he does, which, fans tend to get hung up on what someone doesn't, especially when a team underperforms. But even when they win a title, let's be honest, right? I mean? It's like, we won, but man, that guy pissed me off. It's like, what? Stop. But that's Twitter, and that's pre-Twitter. I've been doing this a long time. Fans have been the way they've always been, right? We just have a bigger microphone with Twitter, right? And, I love them for it, because without their passion, I wouldn't have the job that I have. So this is no hate from me. But, you could trade out of JaVale McGee. You could trade out of the number 10 pick. There are all these pieces that they have where if you put them together, you might be able to get something back of real value. And that becomes a very difficult thing. Like, I don't know where, this is just, again, thrown out stuff, not aggregatable, whatever.
Something like that. Yeah, I got
yes. Let's say Draymond Green and the Warriors can't work it out. He's got a player option. They don't want to keep him long-term because of their price point. The rules were changed in part because of the Warriors. And so now Green is like, well, if you're not going to pay me, I don't want to be here. And I'm going to opt in. And that's going to cost you 50, 60, 70 million dollars on top of my salary, right? And they're like, okay, well, we're going to trade you. Well, now you start to get into, well, now where does he possibly go? And to have like Luka as your primary ball handler and also Kyrie as a primary, and then to have that extra guy who can completely run your offense when your stars get trapped, who can captain your defense. I'm not saying they should go get Draymond, but it's like the idea of like, okay, well, maybe there's a deal where number 10 goes to a team that will take Bertans or Hardaway. And now the Warriors get nothing back, but maybe they're getting just off the money and they're getting a draft pick, or they're getting some second round. I'm making stuff up, but there are, if you're the front office of the Mavericks, it's time to be as creative as possible, but you're limited by the participation of other free agents. Who's going to come? You're limited by Kyrie. You're limited by the trade possibilities, and all of those things. The numbers I can map out, that's great, but I'm not the one taking the calls and knowing. I have ideas from other teams. I have ideas from maybe people I know close to the Mavericks who can at least give me an idea, but I rarely ever talk to a team about themselves, because that's kind of like we have a great relationship. Let's go crap on these other teams and I won't bother you about yours. And at some point when you talk to enough people, there are some commonalities. But even that might not tell you fact. That'll tell you like, this is the discussion, this is the buzz, but that might be intentional buzz anyway. Like from my understanding, Kyrie expects that the Mavericks are going to pay him what he is expecting to get. Maybe they're willing to pay him less than that. I mean, what else can another team offer? You would be requiring like the Rockets to not get James Harden to then go after Kyrie Irving. I don't see the Spurs going after him. You go down the list of cap room teams with space. I don't think there are that many that would pay Kyrie, but you just need one, right? Yeah. And if it's one, then it's one. And if it's, then you got to pay if you're the Mavericks, but maybe they have leverage to pay him in the 30s. And that solves some of the problem too. And then maybe instead of having 5 million, now you have 12 million. And maybe that's the difference between one player who might help you to one player who definitely will help you. Plus you have the biannual exception. Maybe you can squeeze that out too. And that's comparable money to the tax. You're just basically adding at that point. You're going from 5 to 4, same player roughly, let's say. So now you're adding the ability to get a 12-2, but it's coming out of Kyrie's pocket, and does that set him off in a way that is like, well, I don't feel appreciated. I thought we had an agreement that maybe he misunderstood. Keep it in mind, like the Mavericks can't have promised him anything. If they have, they have. I don't know that they have, but if they did, it wouldn't be binding anyway. And they would certainly deny it because it's illegal. And the last thing, I'm not a guy trying to get teams dock draft picks and stuff.
Sure.
The stuff that came out on Twitter that like came out like at 12:01 or whatever, that got the Bulls docked, the Heat, like teams have been getting in trouble. The Bucks got in trouble. I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble. You know what I mean? Like I'm writing what people are talking about though. And most people tell me like, yeah, Kyrie's going back to the Mavs. Whether it happens or not, we'll have to wait and see. I certainly understand there's got to be some hesitancy on the Mavericks to just max him out, and then to max him out for 5 years, at his age. And then also, questionable reliability, fair or not. I think fair, but some people would say, Kyrie's, great and will be everything that they hope he will be. And I certainly root. I'm a rooter. I'm not a hater. I'm a rooter. I want people to succeed. But that's my take on where Dallas is, I think.
And it seems, with the kind of like the week leading up to the draft or days leading up to the draft, there's been a couple like scenarios that have been put out there as possibilities for the 10th pick in trades. I think one was reported it was like possibly like Bojan Bogdanovic in the 31st pick with the Pistons in exchange for Tim Hardaway Jr. in the 10th pick. And then I believe another one was trading down to 15 with the Atlanta Hawks for John Collins and kind of swapping out Davis Bertans' salary. What are your thoughts on like those types of scenarios? With kind of evaluating the salary cap landscape of the Mavs, would it be more advantageous to kind of prioritize moving off of that worse salary like Davis Bertans? I guess there's a lot in there, but just I'm curious what your thoughts are on those types of things for sure.
So like terrible contracts have a way of eventually becoming less terrible or even valuable as a trade chip. Bertans has more than 1 year, but the last year, so he's got 17 million this next year, and then he has an additional year at 16. But that 16 is what's called an early termination option. It's a player decision, but only 5 million of it is guaranteed if he opts in. So assuming he opted in and he was getting 17 and a half, based on 2 years, he could be stretched, which means waived and then stretched and paid, and he would get $17.5 million, but that $17.5 million would be over 5 years. So is that terrible? If you're a team it depends on the team, right? It depends on the compensation that Dallas is giving up. That would be $3.5 million, is it, a year over 5 years? And so you're basically like the Mavs can just stretch him now, and that would cut like 14-ish million off their numbers. And now we didn't trade any of our guys. All right. If you're the Mavericks, we solved the problem that I presented earlier, and I'd have to plug that in and see how much it solved. But maybe now they have the full $12 million exception to spend. Now they have a little more flexibility, or maybe, if Kyrie were to leave, maybe that's a path to more cap room. So the Mavericks absorbing that, bullet of stretching Bertans could be preferable if the price is too high to trade him in the 10. Like I wouldn't trade 10 in Bertans just to get off of Bertans. However, if there's the right return. Now, the Pistons last deadline were adamant to teams that tried to acquire Bojan, that they want to make the playoffs this next season. They think that Bojan is an important part of what they need. Shooting, a little bit of playmaking. He's not necessarily a great defender, but he's like a good enough defender where they don't die on the vine. They have a lot of big guys. They think that it can work. So you're giving them enough to feel like it's worth pivoting off of that. And is Josh Green a number 10 that? Could be. You know what I mean? Like, do they want to get younger? Bojan is not of the same age bracket of everybody else. That's a pro and a con. But he's got a very Bojan has a very favorable deal. It's not cheap by any means, but it is flexible. So it's basically 20 million this next season and then 19 million the next one, of which only 2 million is guaranteed. So it is a very flexible contract. So the other one, like it just becomes a question of, what's the right answer for putting together a real team that can win. So, and what's the cheapest version of that? Now, if you're holding out for the absolute best of all best, I mean, that's the famous Cuban quote is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And I that is one of, I don't buy everything he says. He's very good at what he does. I don't buy anything, I don't buy everything that any human says, because we're all, but of his sayings, I mean, that's the one I take to heart the most, because there's a tendency to want to get the best deal. Sometimes if you sell, the goal is sell high, buy low. If you're trying to sell too high, at some point you've missed your window. If you're trying to buy low, at some point you missed your window. Sometimes there's a middle ground. So I think there's a pathway here for the Mavs. You're already starting with one of the best players in the NBA. So your starting point is good. The question is how to navigate through the negotiation with Kyrie and then the negotiation with other teams by which to add. And just dumping Bertans is only important if you're using that flexibility immediately. There's a reason for that flexibility. Trading number 10, I think, is a viable path for them. You can argue that whoever they get at number 10 will probably be an NBA rotation player, a potential starter at 10 over time, but probably not for years 1 and 2. Reasonably so, they could be a starter in year 2. Unlikely to be a starter in year 1. Unlikely to be a major contributor. You say, well, what about Christian Brown? What about Austin Reeves, who did a huge amount of he contributed a lot in his first year, undrafted, and was a playoff starter, putting up 20-something points a game in playoffs. Sure, go. Why not just take the next Jokic in the second round? You know what I mean? It's like easy, right? Like that. Everyone's going to do that now, right? Yeah, everyone's going to draft the next MVP of the league in the second round. It's hard to do. So if it was easy, everyone would do it, and then it would, and then everybody would win every year. But only one team wins, and most teams don't get that. So the number 10, the odds of the number 10 pick being the reason why the Mavs are in the playoffs and are successful in the playoffs this year are low. But long term, there's value in players under rookie scale contracts that are relatively inexpensive, and probably grow into a really important piece. So if you're giving that up, you better be getting something that really makes sense, like moving off of Tim Hardaway, moving off of Bertans. Sure, but what's coming back? It's easy to say what you're getting rid of. It's got to be something really nice, really valuable, that fits. And what are the team's weaknesses? I mean, I think, would we say defense is probably high on the list?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Maybe, athleticism and size at the wing.
Yeah.
Like Jeremy Grant is maybe not the guy you're going to get, but maybe a younger Jeremy Grant would be the idea. Basically a replacement of Dorian Finney-Smith. 2 or 3 of those, you know what I mean? Maybe a starting center would be nice. There's a lot that you're trying to fix. And you do have, Hardaway is a serviceable NBA player. I could see teams like, the Suns. I think you mentioned the Hawks, and, the thing about the Hawks and John Collins, John is a very solid player. He's not great necessarily at any aspect of the game, but he's solid. But he's a commitment of in the neighborhood of $26 million a year. So if you want him, I think the Hawks are, the Mavericks aren't the only team with problems. Every team has, other than the Nuggets, and they do have a problem. Their problem is, can they keep Bruce Brown, right? Because of the situation they're in. So even they, who just won a title, they're out celebrating today, parading around Denver, whatever. They have their problems too. They got to figure their stuff out. So if you're the Mavericks, you're trying to take advantage of the Hawks, who probably can't be affording to pay what they're paying for their roster as constructed. And to get out of John Collins, you're not giving up the 10 at that point. At that point, you're probably taking, you're looking at what Atlanta has and saying, okay, what can you give us to take John Collins? Okay, you've got number 15. Give us 15. Now you're Mavericks. Okay, now you've got John Collins. Now maybe you're looking to flip someone else with those picks. So I don't know how aggressive they're going to be able to be, because the Kyrie decision's pending. But they're going to have to be aggressive enough to keep this team, not even keep, just get this team to the playoffs and keep them there. because there is a clock on Luka. And as we talked about, like, you want to make sure that he's not disgruntled after 2-3 years of not making the play-in or the playoffs. He just doesn't want to be there. He probably is there the rest of his career, or at least through another contract. I think if you were to ask him under a lie detector, that would be the goal. As would probably be what he wants. He probably wants to win here. I don't know. Who knows, right?
He said he's happy here. We got to take him at his word for now.
Exactly. So now they just need to give him a baseline. Like, I'm not saying you have to win a title every year, but like, you want to feel like, okay, we got to the playoffs. Now we got to second round. Now we got to the third round. Now we got to the finals. Like, now we won. Like, the Celtics are looking at each other and they're like, oh, what's wrong with us? Like, they got to the conference finals again, but they didn't get to the finals. It was a step back. So that's you don't want Luka when it's time for him to make the decision to be feeling like I'm running in place and I can't win here. That's like the worst case scenario.
It's interesting because we're talking about obviously how this roster is going to be put together based on some of the salary cap constraints and the collective bargaining agreement. They have a couple of young pieces to the Mavericks in terms of Jaden Hardy and Josh Green. Josh Green, eligible for an extension. Him and Luka will be the first pair of Mavericks to get a contract extension since, I believe, 2008. Josh Green got himself a contract extension. Rookies and contract extensions don't necessarily marry together with the Dallas Mavericks, it seems like. But at the same time, with this collective bargaining agreement, what does this mean for how this team specifically needs to build in the future, given the fact that you need, it looks like, younger, cheaper talent to be able to stay under those aprons and still be able to afford a competitive roster going forward?
Well, I mean, there isn't a cookie cutter answer or decision. Like, there's no one way to do it. Like, for instance, the Nuggets built off of a second round pick, right? Whereas, LeBron James was the number 1 pick, but then the Lakers were built through free agency and trade. The Warriors were built through the draft for the most part, but then they also did something called KD, back in the day that kind of mattered, right? And that was literally taking advantage of a quirk between collective bargaining agreements that shouldn't have been. It was actually when the TV deal kicked in, but pre-CBA, whatever it was, I'd have to look back. Yeah, no, it was, they didn't accept cap smoothing, which is now part of the CBA. So basically that should never have happened as far as NBA rules and the spirit of what they're trying to do, which is not stockpile star on star on star. So the question then becomes, if you're the Mavericks, is it better to have less expensive salary? But as you mentioned, Josh Green is up for money. So then the question is, like, are you paying him that money now? And how much? And is there a number that works for Josh Green that locks him in long term at a value that, like Kyle Kuzma exceeded the value of his contract. He was earning like 13 and he's performing at a player who's probably paid 25, roughly. That's not a scientific answer, but let's just say that's the number. That's what you want if you're the team, right? If you're an agent, that's not what you want. And so there's a push and pull between, locking in players, the right number of years, the right dollars, where you're maximizing their earnings, against their earnings potential, which is an unknowable thing until it actually happens. So, and then there's no sliding doors where you're able to find out what would have happened. So, I don't know that, like, the Mavs are committed to somebody making in the neighborhood of 45 million-ish a year, a little bit less, 40-ish this year, 43, then 46, and then it jumps up higher. So they're already have a big chunk towards that one player, but no one else on the team is that expensive, minus Kyrie, right? That's a flexible position where maybe they do need a bunch of 10 to $20 million guys, and maybe that should be what they should be targeting: depth and younger players who can play. I mean, we're seeing Austin Reeves, Bruce Brown, Christian Braun, guys who are either young, or in the case of Bruce, is that he's a little bit older, but he's not. He's just recently out of the rookie scale era. He was a recent first round pick. Those players matter. Jaden Hardy, if he can be a playoff contributor in the Jalen Brunson role, that solves your problem, and you have him under contract if you're the Mavericks for this year and next at the minimum. But I cover in LA the Lakers, and they sort of took that path where they went we'll get AD and LeBron and Russ, and Russell Westbrook, and we'll give everyone else the minimum, give or take, and it should work because the top end talent's so valuable. Well, it didn't work. And so now they've got a bunch of guys they traded Russ for that are making less, and we'll see, what happens with Austin, who's due money, Rui Hachimura, but that's one way of doing it. There's no set way. The Clippers went out and got 2 big stars, and they found ways to trade into more money. So they're just spending, but mostly through trade. I think again, you get to the point where if you're young, if you're going to treat them like assets, young players, I don't like to refer to players as assets, but in our context, you're treating, in this case, Hardy, Green, and the number 10 as trade assets now because you are moving them. What's the most you can get back? Versus take away the asset tag and just as humans, as players who can develop and be a part of your organization for a long time, what is the value that you can get out of them? Can you get more by, spending more time with them and giving them what they need to thrive and survive and develop players? And the Mavs, they developed Dorian Finney-Smith and Jalen Brunson, right? Like if you go back a certain number of years, they were bottom tier in developing young talent. They would draft, players wouldn't ever come out and matter. That's why you said like they haven't been re-signing guys on extensions, right? It's because they haven't. Some of it was being in win now mode. Some of it was just the wilderness of rebuilding post Dirk, which happens. But they got Luka, and then I think their timeline changed pretty quickly because they went from like, this is a young player who might be incredible to actually he's one of the best players in the league immediately. And it's like, that's a pretty big change for a front office where like, okay, well now we need to deal with that. Like the Celtics went through it too. Like they had suddenly Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and they were like, Jaylen Brown was a bench player. They were really good, but they didn't even have Tatum yet. They went to I think they went to the conference finals that year and then changed over. And then the next year it was like Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum were taking them to the conference finals. And it's like, holy, we're, so now they're like, well, let's get all these guys, and they're spending money and they're making trades to win now. And it kind of stumbled, but then it gradually regained footing and they got to the finals. And then this last year, I thought they did a great job last year in roster decisions. It just didn't, you're not going to win every year, and it just didn't happen. But they were, so this is where the Mavs are. Like, is Reggie Bullock at his age? Is Maxey? I think is a very valuable player, but he's not young. But I still think he belongs on this team. Tim Hardaway and Bertans. Like, how many of these players need to be here outside of Luka right now on the roster? Who needs to be here in 2-3 years? Those are the difficult decisions that the Mavs need to make, and you're making them in. If you don't have those players, it's what you got in return for them, or if you're letting Kyrie walk, like what are you getting done without him? And that's where you start looking at the other list of free agents. It's not great. I'm not going to lie. If the Mavs have a ton of money, they let Kyrie go. They don't have a ton of money. They don't have as much as other guys. And it's not even a great market of free agents. So, what do you do? And how do you negotiate with Kyrie if he's going to take offense to you asking for less? My understanding is they expect the max, his people. Whether he gets it or not, I mean, I expect a lot of things in life. I've been blessed. I've been blessed. I'm not lying. I can't complain. I got a nice job. I got a nice, beautiful wife, nice family. So I am not complaining. But everybody has things we don't get, and I'm very curious to see. Mavs are fascinating. They're one of the fulcrum teams. Some teams are like Nuggets. They got one decision to make. They have more than one, but one key decision. Is there a way to keep Bruce Brown there? If not, how do you replace him? And probably return the same team, right? Like, but outside of them, I mean, some team, there are other teams who are pretty well set, but the Mavs are definitely one that is on my radar to find out. Like that 10 pick, I could definitely see team. There's enough depth in this draft that 10 should be valuable. The question is only valuable if it's valuable to the Mavs in trade. It's only valuable if what you're getting back is valuable to the Mavs.
One of the elements of the offseason for the Mavs that I think not necessarily as a focus now, but maybe later, could be Christian Wood's free agency. It seems unlikely that he'll return. What are some things that stand out to you that are important to know about kind of how like sign and trades kind of work?
Sure.
If they were to move him to kind of accommodate where he would end up, on a team that may not have that room to kind of outright sign him.
Right. Well, the starting point of a sign and trade is getting the player to participate, and that's the hardest part. Because when free agency starts, or even before it starts, players are reaching out to teams reaching out to players, agents are, not the players usually themselves, and they're trying to identify where the money is going to come from for them, and they're not going back to the team and asking for a sign and trade unless the teams that are craving them, wanting them, they can't make it happen without that. So Christian made $14 million last year, roughly. If he gets over a 20% raise, then the salary matching gets a little more complicated. It's a way to make sure you don't overpay someone in this kind of scenario. So you start to get to a point where it's like half the value of his contract out in trade, or the mid-level. So it would probably be like, I guess, whatever 14 million times 1.2, between that 12.2 to that figure. And after that, because there's a point where it'll just be 12.2 and then it gets high enough. Let's say it was 40 million. Then his outgoing salary would be 20 million. And I don't think that's probably above that's about his max. His max is 40. So if he got max, his outgoing salary would be 20. If he's 20 million, I think his outgoing salary would probably be 12. I have to double check that. It might not be exactly 12, but in that range. It may not be the mid-level, it might be the early. I'd have to look up the exact figure, but it's in that ballpark. So the other challenge is, short term, it's not a problem. Teams that are over the second apron can't send out players via sign. Well, they can, but they can't bring players back. But that's not a rule yet. It's a rule, but it doesn't take effect yet. So you could do a sign and trade. There's just no value. You can't bring anybody back for the player you send out. So you could do it maybe for a draft pick, but it's not going to help solve your problem. But that's not a rule yet. But the incoming, so a team acquiring Wood via sign and trade is then hard capped. And so that means they have a spending limit of 100. I think we said it was 169 roughly. And so right off the bat, you're crossing off any of those teams that are high spending teams. And if they're cutting salary, cool, but they got to cut enough salary, right? So like if you're 20 over and you cut 20, but now you're paying him 20, you're over it, right? So there's a line, and there's like I think usually what happens is that a player like Wood will go to the teams that have cap room, which look like at this time, and trades could change it, options, but like Detroit, Houston, Indiana, Oklahoma City, Orlando, San Antonio, and Utah. How much varies, depends on who they keep, who they trade, who they opt out, who they whatever. And then everybody else either has 12 million to spend, which is the mid-level, 12.2, or they have 5 or 0. So the market, the baseline is, if you're Wood, if I'm his agent, I'm calling up all those teams that have money, who's interested, try to negotiate a workable price. Then you strike out. If you do, now you're calling all those teams at 12.2. You're probably calling all of them anyway. What's the most you can offer? What's your situation? So that's the Mavericks market as far as, number one, if they wanted to keep him, who else is offering more? Can they, if the most you can get is 12.2 or less, then maybe it's worth keeping him. But again, we talked about the numbers. They are what they are. Very quickly, the Mavs are into that second apron, and they have their own punishments and issues. Remember, most contracts aren't 1 year; they're multiple year, and so the more you commit, the harsher penalties don't kick in this year, but they do the year after. So if you make those commitments, you're in trouble, unless you're winning, in which case, yeah, it's. Some teams are money adverse to spending money no matter what, because of their markets and because of their situation. I don't view Mavericks have avoided the tax by and large, but I view that as probably proper recognition by ownership and leadership that you can't really buy a title in the NBA, and you're better off spending it wisely. Whether they have or haven't spent it wisely is a different question, but I think they understood, like, just adding isn't the way to just win. And then after all that, now you're like, okay, we do have a taker, but I'll make up a team. It's the Sixers, right? Oh, well, that's not a good example. Let's say, because who knows, Harden may leave. Mm-hmm. Let's go with the Clippers, because that's straight ahead. They're above the second apron. Like, they can't really trade easily. They can match like 110%. But now you're Christian Wood's agent. Clippers say, yes, we'll pay you this amount, but we have to do a sign and trade. Well, they can't sign and trade because they're over the apron. So they're out. Okay, darn. So now we go to the next tier. It's like, okay, we have Denver. Oh, well, they're under that second apron. They have, but if they do a trade, now they're over. Okay, they can't do it either. So now we're back at those $12 million teams. Maybe they want to spend $12 million somewhere else. And now you find a suitor and you make a deal. So really quickly, those list of options for Christian Wood, 30 teams aren't going to want him. Now, maybe 5 will, maybe 1 will, maybe 10, maybe 20. He has to find that out. Maybe of those teams, only a small portion can pay him what he wants. Then you go to Dallas and you say, is there anything that works here? And the answer is yes or no, understanding that there's this, base year compensation trade issue where if he makes a certain amount, it can screw up with the numbers, but it's not prohibitive necessarily. The point being is it's a pathway. There's flexibility. Fans tend to sign and trade away players in fake trades all summer before free agency. Last year we had one, Colin Sexton. That's it. It's usually restricted free agents. Usually because like if you're a team that has money and you can't just pay the player because the other team can match, you might negotiate, okay, instead of us giving an offer, we'll negotiate a sign and trade so that we don't have to go through that process. That's usually what a sign and trade, I think it was Lonzo Ball was a sign and trade before, but Lowry was a sign and trade, I think, from Toronto to Miami. So like it does happen. It's just not as common and as easy to just put together as fans would like in their fake trades. It's like, of course,
trade machines galore. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, of course, we'll sign and trade Wood for this player. I mean, sure, it could happen, and I can't say, as long as it's legal, I can't say no. I mean, it's possible, but you want to temper your expectations. I don't think the Mavs are going into this saying this is, signing Christian Wood is going to be the key to our summer. It'd be a bonus, and it's certainly something you would try to foster if possible. Like, we don't intend to bring your guy back, but we'd love to participate in a sign and trade. That's fair. Whether, but maybe they want to bring him back. I don't know. It doesn't sound like it from what I've heard. And with the money, I can understand, with their situation, maybe it's not that Christian was not good. Very talented scorer. I think the bigger issue is that the Mavs have the scoring taken care of. It's that they need everything else. And he supplements what they already have. Different position than Luka and Kyrie, but I think they have greater need in role. This is not a team that needs a third star, in my opinion. This is a team that needs a bunch of role players to facilitate. If you need a star, it's closer to a Draymond Green version of a star than it is a scoring star, than a Bradley Beal or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. As we kind of look through the lens of the Mavericks here, what are the kind of top 2 or 3 things that we need to know about how this collective bargaining agreement, whether it comes to the Mavericks' ability to talk to Kyrie, when they can talk to him? What are a couple of things from the Mavericks lens for you that fans should have on their radar going into this free agency period and the draft?
Right. If it was next year, which it's not, then they could negotiate right now with Kyrie, but that rule isn't in effect at this time. So after the NBA Finals, you can negotiate with your own players. Not now, next June. So that doesn't help. So, I mean, the main thing to know is that, number one, they can't technically negotiate with Kyrie until, I think, June 30th. However, it's likely that they have on some level and will continue to do so because that's how the industry tends to work, whether it's legal or not. And Mavs would never admit that, and I never accuse them of doing so. To get that, like I said, I'm not into getting people dock picks. That's not what I'm here for. But just, as I try to be honest with what I've learned about the industry with the fans, that's my, I'm trying to be transparent. Like, there is a pre-negotiation, which is why the NBA is changing the rules a little bit. It's kind of a Band-Aid on a bigger.
It's the worst kept secret in the business.
Yeah. Right. And that's fine. It's just the way you operate. And that's fine. When it comes to the money, like, the max is what it is. The number of years is what it is. They could try to do something incentivized where, this is what, from my understanding, Brooklyn was trying to do. They were trying to incentivize some of his contract to make sure he showed up, to make sure he didn't disappear from the team for periods of time, which is something that has happened before with Kyrie Irving. And also like a fifth year or a fourth year. This is point, and I'd have to check the over 38 rule. How old is Kyrie right now? I have to look it up.
31, yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I think he's free and clear of that. So that shouldn't be an issue. So, 92. So, 5. The way I would say it is like, Kyrie is a delicate, just like I'm being choosy in my words. He's a mercurial person. Mercurial.
That's the word I've used, is mercurial for sure.
Okay, I don't know if I've ever said that word out loud, by the way. It's like one of those words I've read. It's like,
that's all right. There you go.
I'm not even quite sure how to say that. Mercurial. But and like, he's brilliant at what he does on a court. There's a lot of things he's brilliant at off the court, including very giving and generous in some of the off-court things he's done that he doesn't put front and center. And not to say that others brag about, but you're not getting press releases about what Kyrie Irving's doing to help people in other countries that are growing up, in poverty, that he's helping. There's a lot to dislike over what he did and said in the Brooklyn experience. So I don't want to raise him to a pedestal he doesn't belong on, but I also don't want to drop him down to be like some, mega villain either. He's a complicated human being, of which, to an extent we all are. Maybe he's more sensitive than others. I don't think money drives him as the primary force, or the job of basketball drives him as a primary force, but I also think it matters. And we saw it mattered. He could have opted out last year from the Nets and gone somewhere else if money didn't matter. And if he wasn't happy there, then he would have opted out, and just, if money didn't matter. But it does. So how do you compromise with Kyrie and not, damage the relationship? Maybe it's overpaying him in the beginning and going with a shorter deal. Maybe 3 years at the max. And at times with Luka to an extent. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there's a compromise somewhere. I don't know the answer because it's unknowable, and we'll know. I mean, it's knowable in 2 weeks or whatever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But like today, it's unknowable. And again, like, whatever Kyrie and his people might say, whatever Mark Cuban and Nico Harrison and Dennis Lindsay, whoever you want to ask, on the Mavericks, whatever they say, like, they're probably going to say, under truth serum, that they don't really know either. Even if they do have a deal worked out, they might not even know that Kyrie's going to follow through with it. Most people follow their word in the NBA, but we had Marcus Morris going to the Spurs, and then, and then he reneged. So, it happened. There's nothing crazy in the new rules specific to his contract, other than there's a second apron. And if the Mavs are going to commit to being above that, their flexibility diminishes, and it's punitive in different ways and could hurt draft picks down the road, which not immediately, but after a year, it could start to become more of an issue. But paying Kyrie is important if you can't find a way to replace him satisfactorily. And the clock of Luka is ever present. Understanding that it's probably, you're giving him a reason. You're trying to not give him a reason to leave. I think he has the reason to stay. You're just trying to make sure that you don't mess that up. Not pointing fingers. It's just, it's hard to build a team in this league based on the rules, let alone the luck factor and just health and things working out, a shot going in that should have or shouldn't have, someone getting hurt. It's a tough industry to succeed in. It's why you do have some exceptions. Certainly you have your Boston and your Lakers and a few teams that have, Miami and Golden State, who have won a little bit more than others. But Denver just got their first title. They've been at it a long time. NBA, they came from the ABA, but in the NBA, they've been at it a long, long time. So, but it's not even all about winning a ring. The problem for Mavs and Mavs fans is that they did win a ring, and now they expect to win again, which is great. You got that forever. The teams that have never won, like, shoot, you get them a ring, it's like, you're going to have statues everywhere forever. There's a Dirk statue somewhere, plenty of Dirk statues, I'm sure, right? Well deserved as well.
One thing I was curious about. So say they're with the 10th pick, the Mavericks draft a prospect because, like, for let's say a trade didn't transpire. What are the restrictions for trading the player that you drafted? Like, is there a
Sure.
that someone should know for sure?
So when you draft someone, you now have their rights. Okay, so before you take the pick, it's a pick. The moment that you execute the pick no longer exists. It's the rights to a player. And now you can trade the rights to that player without, it doesn't have any monetary value. It obviously has value, but it doesn't match in trade. So the projected salary for the number 10 pick is going to be about $5.2 million. If you trade that player, you can't bring back like a $5 million or $6 million player. You can bring back no salary. So you can bring back another pick, or you could use other means to match salary. However, you technically can sign that player. And unlike normal free agents who can't be traded until December or January, like for instance, if they re-sign Kyrie, probably can't be traded till December 15th. If they re-sign Wood and gave him a raise greater than 120%, January 15th. Doesn't apply to draft picks. There's a 30-day waiting period. They want to make sure that you don't just sign and then trade a bunch of them. They want to at least give you an obstacle, not a big obstacle, but an obstacle. So let's say the draft is on the 22nd, but the player was drafted for another team, but they need the salaries to work, so they sign the player, but they can't sign the player. Well, if they're rookie scale, they can sign July 1st, which means they probably can't be traded until I think the 31st of July. I think it's 30 days. So yeah, let's say that now you have to, so now that player doesn't get to participate in summer league with the team that they would be traded to, because they're on the Mavericks. They've been traded to the nonsense Pelicans, right? Don't aggregate. So he's traded to the Pelicans. The Pelicans don't get time with him, with coaches in the gym. They don't have time to start to give him a sense of how they're going to play. They don't have a chance to get to know the player's work ethic. They've only seen the guy play in college and then maybe one or two workouts, and then maybe saw him at the combine, maybe, or in NCAA tournament, whatever. Like they don't really, and players aren't in the same kind of shape because they haven't been playing, right? Like you stop playing in March competitively. So like Wembanyama is still playing, but by and large, NCAA players haven't played for a while, and as much as you want to work out on your own, that you can't match NBA basketball. So you lose some of that, but it's still not prohibitive. And an example, wasn't it Agbaji with Oshay Agbaji? I think, no, was he might have been signed with Cavs first. I'd have to check. I think he signed with the Cavs, and then the Donovan Mitchell trade happened after. No, either that, yeah, because it was Gobert who went first, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe so.
Donovan was later. So Kessler was traded with zero value to the Jazz because his salary, he hadn't signed yet. And so you're trading zero value rights. In the case of Agbaji, if I'm saying that right, he signed with the Cavs, probably played summer league, and then the trade came up later and he was included. Because he was signed, that salary went towards salary matching. So that's the main difference in, from a CBA point of view, from a salary cap point of view. Otherwise, it's not necessarily significant other than, they have zero value in trade matching salary.
That makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And obviously there's a lot to take in. I know for someone like you, who's a capologist and someone who writes about this constantly, there's so many different elements to take a look into this. And obviously there's a lot of information, but this has been absolutely terrific, Eric. And before we let you go, obviously got your sports business classroom there. Tell us a little bit about that and what people can look forward to. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, there it is. That's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
We go to the website, just look it up. In addition to, I have former students writing for me. I also write for the site. And so we just put up today, I put up an AI, one of my students did an AI generated mock draft that takes out the human element. No idea if it's good because it's like an experiment, and we'll find out. Like, it looks good to me, but like when the draft happens, I can't wait to see but I have a whole bunch of students building out scouting reports and building out a mock draft. So we'll have our mock 6.0 tomorrow, Friday. If depends when you're listening to this. On Friday the I don't know what day it is, 16th. But go to the Sports Business Classroom and you'll see that the banner, there's a link to our immersive program in Las Vegas, which starts in July. It's at Summer League. And it's a wonderful program. You get to act as a team. You get to negotiate with other students. You work closely with teachers. We have different fields of study. Obviously, I teach salary cap, collective bargaining agreement, et cetera. We have another track, which is media and broadcast, and then another, which is scouting, video, and analytics. And it's just, we get people jobs, including, one of our students is working with the Mavs, just got a summer position with hopefully a long-term position in Preston Klaus. He's tremendous and an asset to the Mavs. I can guarantee you that. I mean, hopefully they'll use him well, but he's a very bright young man and was one of our winners from our mock deadline competition that we had. And, but we, it's for me, it's about the joy of passing on what we do. Teaching, I've always been like, let's try to, and not to say that I'm brighter or more intelligent than anyone else, but if I have knowledge that I've worked really hard to get, if I can share it with others and help lift others to be, more educated about a topic, then in theory, we're raising the education level, and then everybody should be, better at what we do. At what we all do. It doesn't always translate, and teams still make crazy decisions that are mind-boggling at times. It was really hard to teach students not to trade draft picks willy-nilly when the Wolves had just done that. It really made one of our key lessons just really thrown out the window. But it's hammered home, though, the lesson, because they made the playoffs, but they didn't get very far. And it was, in retrospect, people are like, why'd you do that? Although at the time, everyone was kind of like, why'd you do that? That's a different story. But yeah, check it out. It's a wonderful program. If you're willing to invest in yourself and you really want to go into this field, beyond study, but to actually work in this industry, it's a great way to build up a networking platform, to learn the subject, and to, people see our name, Sports Business Classroom, on resumes, and they're like, okay, they went through the program. I can ask, Eric, Larry, some of the other teachers there. Just seeing the name, like they know, because Mark Cuban has spoken at Sports Business Classroom. Like Rick Carlisle has spoken multiple times, former coach, obviously, at our program. We have a great relationship with people in the league, and it's my favorite time of year. I love what we do. Like I said, I'm pretty fortunate and blessed to be in this position. So if this is what you're serious about doing, and it's not $0, it's not cheap. We only have, I'm not a salesperson. I don't get commissions or anything like that. There really is almost no spots left. I think the site says that we have less than 10, fewer than 10. We definitely, we had a meeting the other day, and we're already at a record number, and we just don't have physical space in the rooms for much more. We kind of have it capped at a certain number. So if it's something you're interested in, do it now. Fill out. We don't let everyone in. You have to fill out an application, send a resume, cover letter, whatever. And then we try to vet so that we're getting people who are. We don't want people who are just want fantasy camp and want to be around these. We want it to be. And by and large, we get that. And that's why we have a really great track record of getting people professional work in the NBA. Or at least NBA related.
That's right. That's right.
Agent, you can work for TV, you can work for Nike, Adidas, or you can go down the list. Anyway, I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This has been terrific. A real education and knowledge of obviously a complicated system, and at the same time looking at it through the Mavs lens. A lot of Mavericks fans will appreciate this perspective here as they get ready to do their whole, mock trades and trade machines and everything else that they try to put together. So this has been terrific. You can find Eric on Twitter at Eric Pincus, salary cap strategist, capologist, and also instructor for Sports Business Classroom, and of course, writer for Bleacher Report. Go check out his entire offseason guide. Got all 30 teams up, including for the Dallas Mavericks as well. A lot of information there, and you can be able to get a little more educated about everything happening with the Mavs. So, Eric, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on anytime, and good luck this summer for your team.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll see how they pan out.
That's right. This has been Inside the Mavs. Again, you can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give the podcast a 5-star rating. Write a review while you're there. You can check out any episode anytime, wherever you get your podcast for free. Remember, you can find Grant on Twitter at Grant Afseth. You can check out all his work at Mavs SI covering the Dallas Mavericks as he gets you all ready and primed for the NBA draft here a week from today as we record this. And of course, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports with all my insights for the Mavericks as well for 105.3 The Fan. For Eric, for Grant, my name is Kevin Grant. This has been Inside the Mavs. We'll talk to you later. Peace.